When we look at Genesis chapter 39, I think we have an encouragement in Joseph and not only how he handles temptation, but how he views sin. And a little bit of background on this chapter. So Joseph has just been sold into slavery by his brothers. And it starts in verse 1 saying, "Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and how the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and became his personal servant, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he owned he put in his charge. It came about that from the time he made him overseer in his house and over all that he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. Thus the Lord's blessing was upon all that he owned, in the house and in the field. So he left everything he owned in Joseph's charge, and with him there he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate." So we see that the Lord is causing Joseph to prosper, all for his sovereign purposes in preserving Israel, which we see later as we read Genesis. But verse 6 continues saying, "Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. It came about after these events that his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph, and she said, 'Lie with me.' But he refused and said to his master's wife, 'Behold, with me here my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put all that he owns in my charge. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?'" So when we look at this temptation he has, this woman who is just throwing herself at him as she lusts after him, and Joseph says, "Hey, you're his wife. This isn't right." He sees this as sin, and he says, "How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?" See, all of our sin is vertical against God before it's horizontal against each other as well. But all sin is vertical against God. And he says that this is great evil. So he views sin just like the way we should view sin. We should run from it. We shouldn't even entertain it. We should see it for what it is. Now notice how he doesn't try to justify sin. You know how there's times where we try to talk ourselves into the sin that we know is wrong, or we try to justify it some kind of way. Like, you know, when someone comes to you and says, "Oh, it was just a little white lie," you know, trying to make it seem less important or less significant than it is. It's still a lie, and it's still a sin against God. The very sins that nailed Jesus to the cross, we need to view them as sin and as evil, and we need to run from them. And we see that Joseph is doing just that. And he does. Notice how he doesn't say, "Oh, you know, I'm not. This isn't even my home. I shouldn't be here. I might as well make the most of it while I'm here. This woman wants me, so I might as well just give her what she wants. After all, she is my mistress. She does rule over me." No, he doesn't do that. He says, "How could I do this great evil and sin against God?" And verse 10, it says, "As she spoke to Joseph day after day." So she is relentless. He has to deal with this over and over, and he does not give in. It says he did not listen to her to lie beside her or be with her. Now it happened one day that he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the household was there inside. She caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." And again, look at his reaction. There's no one even there to witness this. So if he did commit this sin, there isn't other people there to see him. So with this temptation, you know, he's not saying, "Oh, you know, no one will ever know." He knows that all sin is against God, and God sees everything. And his heart does not wish to commit this sin. And as believers, we should not want to commit sin either. Now, I know that we do fall into sin, but we need to repent of it every time, and we should feel guilty about it. So we look in verse 12 and it says, he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called to the men of her household and said to them, see, he has brought in a Hebrew to us to make sport of us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I screamed. When he heard that I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled and went outside. So she left his garments beside her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with these words, the Hebrew slave whom you brought to us came in to me to make sport of me, and as I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled outside. So she lies, obviously, and she's basically saying that he tried to force himself on her. But when we look at what Joseph actually did, he just took off running. He left when she grabbed him. He left everything, knowing what it could cost him, knowing that even though that he's a slave right now and he has certain work that he's supposed to be doing, but this just landed him in prison by rejecting her. But he knows that all sin is against God, and he does the right thing and he runs away. And I think it's a perfect example for us to follow when we know we are walking into a situation where temptations are present. We should not only be alert, but we need to be willing to run, even if it costs us everything, because we do not compromise with sin.